Okay, good evening. We're going to call the Board of Selectmen meeting to order for tonight, July 25th, 2023. In attendance is myself, Bob Carlson, the first selectman. We also have Nicole Porter and Selectman Brett Mastriani, Admin Finance Director Christine Dias, and a new member to our staff. We have Jennifer Knight, who's going to be now our administrative assistant at Town Hall, working in the Board of Selectmen's office and working with Christine. So welcome, Jen. She's in the meeting tonight so she could meet people. She'll be going to be doing like the past admin did. Most of the minutes she'll be doing online after this, but you're always invited. But that's why she came tonight in person. But all right, so welcome. Try not to make it too long. Could be we just came off one of the longest meetings we've ever had, so hopefully it won't be another one. We're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, thank you. We're going to have public comment on non-agenda items. So if there's any item that is not on our agenda this evening and you'd like to comment, now is the time. So either raise your hand. If anybody's online, raise your hand online, and we'll be glad to entertain those comments. Are there any public comments on non-agenda items? Ed Harris-Simowitz. Ed, you have to go up to that microphone right there. Just state who you are and your address. And talking, and Ed, you got to talk right into the mic. I'm sorry.
Ed Harris-Simowitz.
Is it on, Brett?
321 Wyasset Road here in North Stonington. I'm currently the chair for the Hewitt Farm Committee, and at our last meeting on July 10th, there was an issue that came up by Selectman Mastriani about whether we should have leashes on all dogs that are in the Hewitt Farm area. Because there's a town ordinance that in your recreational complex, that is a requirement that dogs have to be on a leash. We have signs that are posted, we put up several years ago, that indicate the dog must be under control at all times, whatever that may mean, whether it's electronics, voice commands, or on a leash. So what we're trying to do is to figure out, is this applicable, since really the Hewitt Farm does not fall under the jurisdiction of the Recreation Department. Should that apply to the Hewitt Farm? That was the question that we wanted to discuss.
Okay, Selectman Mastriani, since you went to their meeting and you brought up this topic, why don't you comment at this point?
So I can pull up the ordinance as we talk, but it talks about parks and recreational land in the town of North Stonington. So if you look at our ordinance, technically, Hewitt Farm is a park and recreation facility, and it would fall under that, is the way the ordinance is written. At your meeting, I know it came up and we talked about it. And if to be in compliance with the ordinance, then we could always bring that back. And I said that at the meeting, we can always, as the selectmen, we can always send it to a town meeting to amend that ordinance to allow it. But the way the ordinance is written, it talks about parks and rec, that dogs have to be on a leash at all times. So the conversation at that meeting basically was, do you want to amend your rules to adhere to the ordinance, or do we look forward to changing the ordinance so we're not out of compliance with our own ordinance? And I thought you, at that meeting, you voted to put leash rule in and then eventually maybe bring it to a town meeting to change the ordinance.
You know, one of our members, Jonna Chokis, it's like 4 or 5 years ago that we actually did make the signs that we did put up. And there was a lot of feedback. There was a lot of, hemming and hawing about should there be leisure, free, so on and so forth. And we finally, decided on the words that are currently on these platforms as above the times. Now, I went ahead, based on our last meeting, and I removed 6 of the 8 signs. I don't know whether search them out. And so I had come up with this solution. Just change. You wouldn't have to just throw them all away and get new ones, but you could actually salvage them. But I guess the question is now, someone's got to initiate, what is it, a town meeting to do this, or initiate something? I don't know what's required to go off and then pursue this.
So we'd have to initiate at one of our future meetings, a town meeting where we're working on ordinances to change that. So as you were talking, so the ordinance is under public use of parks and recreational facilities. And it lists a park as a town-owned park, parkland, playground, beach, boating facility, recreation place or facility, open space or any other area, place, building or structure in the town owned or used by the town and devoted to active or passive recreation. And then it goes on to talk about domestic animals shall not be permitted to enter or go at large in any park except dogs held on leash by their keepers. So our ordinance is pretty clear on it. It's whether you guys ask the selectmen to go to a town meeting at some point, and if we choose to change the ordinance.
So Brett, the ordinance says all parks and other facilities under the jurisdiction of the recreation commissioners. So that was where the question came as to whether, since the Hewitt Farm is their own separate advisory committee to the Board of Selectmen, not part of the Recreation Commission.
I'm reading through it.
We can, to move on, we could do is we can, put this on our agenda for a future meeting and discuss it then, so we can do some research. But I think that is that from the town ordinance, Christine?
Yes, that's, so it's section 14-23, subsection A.
Okay, so I don't think that we ever formally put the Hewitt Farm under the Park and Recs Department or its commissioner. So I remember when Recreation first got involved when the pavilion was being built. And before that, it was not considered part of Parks and Rec. So I know there was an attempt to, when the pavilion was being funded and built, that we were going to call it, the pavilion was going to come under Parks and Recs, and it does. The Parks and Recs Commission does rent that out at a fee. But I think rather than getting to a long discussion in a meeting that's going to be a fairly long meeting anyway this evening, I'd like to see if we can table that discussion and put it on a future agenda.
Sure, because then we'll get into the dialogue of when they issue parks and what that means. Why don't they fall under some jurisdiction of the recreation ordinance?
Okay.
Yeah, because we also have a recommendation from our animal control officer as well regarding it too. So I think we should take that into account and maybe have her at that meeting.
On that subject, is anyone here who'd like to make comment while we're here?
Why is this even a topic? Gary Nino, 91 Main Street, North Stonington, Connecticut. Why is this even a topic of discussion? Why does this keep coming up? It came up before, came up with a way to make it work, and now it's back up. What's driving this? Because we're consuming a fair amount of the town's time on something that I think is relatively benign. Thanks.
So to answer your question, why is it even coming up? Anything can come up. That's we have a government that listens to the people that live in town, and at any time you can bring something up. It could be something we voted on 2 weeks ago and you may decide that we made a mistake and you want to bring it up again. So, and I will never ask a resident not to speak. So, but just in an effort to make this meeting move, because we're not prepared to discuss it tonight, I thought why not table it and have it at a future meeting? So we could dedicate the time to it that it would deserve, or maybe not deserve, depending on how much reaction we get to it. Carl Johnson, do you have a question?
Carl Johnston, 8B Rudman Road. One thing to consider is if you put it into Parks and Rec, will anything be allowed in the Hewitt property that's not allowed there now as Parks and Rec? As far as any extra buildings, anything going on that the Parks and Recs are gonna do. So if you label it under Parks and Rec and put your statute into it, then does that change the way that they run the Hewitt Farm?
Well, the town, at a very lengthy meeting, I think has 28 bullet points on what you can do and what you can't do on that, and organized recreation is not one of them. It's prohibited. Right, okay,
Right.
thank you.
Yeah, those rules are the same, and we can discuss that then, but yeah, it's a fine line because it is considered a town park.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, let's move on. Selectmen comments. Nicole, do you have anything this evening? Okay, Brett, do you have anything?
Yeah, I'd like to either add this to the agenda at some point today, but we had our farmer's market on Sunday. Attendance has been down the past few markets. And talking to vendors and talking amongst the other members of the committee that helped put it on, we'd like to request that we move it to this 298 building outside and where it's cleared for the last few markets. So I don't know if we need to put that on agenda and get that as an approval.
So we have, when's the next farmer's market? Mid-August?
Mid-August, but we need to get everything advertised, the change, and work out with the vendors.
So I will tell you this, that it's not on the agenda, so I don't think we should vote on it this evening, but we can vote on it on August 8th. But I did speak to the library today and they had no issue with it being over there. I just wanted to make sure we cross our Ts and dot our Is, and the library was fine because of, the educational piece to that deed restriction. But no, they're happy to have it over there. They're actually excited about it. And I don't know why we wouldn't want to move it over there, so you get more visibility from Route 2. So,
And that's the goal, just to have it be more visible.
Yes, more visible, to attract the Route 2 traffic and also, parking. So when it's not as busy as it was before, it doesn't make sense to have everybody helping with parking. So this would help for in and out parking, things like that.
so once again, I would hate to vote on something that's not on the agenda, but I would tell you we could pretty much straw poll the selectmen and see if we are in favor of that. And then we could do a formal vote on the August 8th meeting if you'd like. Okay, is there any comment on that before we have any further discussion? Gary, are you going to say something about that? Or do you want to come before we make a straw poll or no? Okay. I would just say that I'd be in favor of moving it to 290. I think it'd be better for the town, better for the vendors, get some use out of that area. Hewitt Farm is a beautiful place, but I think unless you know the farmer's market there, you can't see it. So they probably were getting repeat customers and then people weren't just stopping in. If there was a sign out in front of the field that said farmer's market, free entrance or no entrance fee, you get people just popping in, right? So I think that would be good for the town, good for the vendors.
Yeah, I was a strong proponent of having it there and keeping it there because people would always comment about how beautiful Hewitt is. They didn't know it was here. So as they came to the market, they would see it. I do think that novelty is worn off just a little bit. And we need to get that drive-through traffic to make it work.
Nicole?
I'm not opposed. I am sad that it's not getting as much traffic at Hewitt because it is such a gorgeous spot, but I'm certainly not opposed to moving it here.
Now, comment,
Did
Gary?
you hold, did you talk about not having them as frequently so that it wasn't just the novelty was there?
Yeah, and there's regular traffic through there. It's just not like it was, but yeah, going to any less frequent would be probably detrimental to it from what we've talked about.
Gary Nino, 91 Main Street. I noticed along Route 2, I know they're gonna improve the crosswalk at the fire station. Are they planning to widen Route 2? Because I see parallel flags on both sides of the road, and then I saw a row of trees come down along before Bon Appetito. Are they planning to widen Route 2?
So those are two different actions. One is the trees have to do with Eversource, and the widening is, they're gonna reconfigure that four-way, but not the road, just that four-way where the light is in the fire station. They're gonna reconfigure that intersection, but there's not any widening. I think we have if you wanna see that town hall, I think I have a plan. I could show you what they're planning on doing. Okay. Anything else? On first selectman comment and report and correspondence, I have nothing this evening. Number 6, let's go and talk about steep grants for 2023. As I mentioned at the last meeting, it was a kind of a surprise to find out that we have steep grants even available to us in this calendar year, which 2024 was when we heard it would be coming out next. I put a call into Greg Howard and Heather Summers that I have not heard back from Heather. Greg is going to get back to me tomorrow. I just want to make sure that since we're considered a distressed community, one of 25 towns, which when I first heard that, I didn't think that was good news, but now I know we're eligible for a lot more funding than we would if we weren't a distressed community. Unfortunately, if you go for a steep grant, you have to opt in, and that forces you to opt out of future steep grants, future funding for distressed communities for 4 years. I would hate to grab a nickel and lose a dime. I don't want to find out that we had millions of dollars at our disposal the next 4 years that we can't access because we went for a steep grant this year. So I'm still in favor of going for the steep grant for the $500,000 or whatever it's going to be. It's got a 20% match, but I don't want to shoot ourselves in the foot and find out that we took 500,000 and we could have had $1 million over the next 4 years. So I would like to talk about what the Board of Selectmen and actually myself, Christine, and Don Hill had spoken about a particular steep grant we might want to do with the money just as an option. And I think Christine Wagner is going to talk a little bit about what the school might want to do. And it may be one versus the other, or maybe a combination of both. Maybe 50% of one project, 50% of another. But I'd like to be prepared so that if we do decide to go for the steep grant and we vote yes on the 8th of August and what we want to go after, then Craig, our grant writer, would have time to get it written so we can put it in for August 18th, which is the deadline. So as far as the town goes, and we're looking at from the town side, and we have not got all our quotes in yet. But we were talking about doing new roofs on this building that needed new roofs. HVAC, which I have no idea why we'd want to have more air conditioning in this room or more heat in the winter. But as we can see, this is a demonstration. I did not turn the heat up just to make us really want to go this route. But the HVAC for this room and for the central office, and also reconfigure the parking lot out here as these meetings, people are figuring out the shorter walk to go from that parking lot to that door than it is to go from that parking lot to that door. So right now we hold about maybe 10 or 15 cars on this side. We have a plan that I gave to CLA, and they're actually designing a parking plan that would hold about 40 to 45 cars on this side of the building. It would be a one way that you would go actually around the greenhouse and back out again. It would help us when it came to voting. It'd help us when it comes to these meetings. It would help the new early learning center as far as doing drop-off. So there's many pluses. Also, we've heard a lot of talk about how dark it is out there, especially in the winter when you're walking out to your vehicles. So we're looking at getting a price on lighting for this parking lot and lighting for the other parking lot on the main entrance, just to make it more easier to walk out when you walk out of the building. In the winter, we know it's dark at 4:30, so a lot of people walk out in the pitch black. So that's something we're getting pricing on. Good news is Don did go up on the roof of this part of the building, and this is done. So the only part of this building that's not done is a 2-story wing. And I was contacted by the owner of that early learning center today, asking me how soon can we start talking about the second floor. So that's a good thing. We would wouldn't want to have a leaking roof on the school. So let's talk about that. If there's any comments by either selectman on that particular plan, and then I'd like to have Christine Wagner weigh in on what the Board of Ed would like to see us do with a steep grant.
I'd like to see what that numbers look like. And I worry about going through planning and zoning and getting those approvals in time to be able to move that forward, because even with a lighting plan, you have to go through planning and zoning for that. But I'd like to see where that comes through. I do have some other ideas, and I know I mentioned them before that I'd like to talk about after we get the presentations as well.
Sure, so we're open to all ideas at this point, but the only problem is we have to get them formulated in a grant written by the 18th of August. And we may pull the plug on the whole thing if I come to you on August 8th and say, hey, we've got a chance to get $1.5 million over 4 years, or take the 500 now. And we'll have to see if that makes sense. So once I hear back from our state senator and our state rep, I'll have more information on that. I'm also going to speak to Amanda Kennedy from the Council of Governments and see what she can tell me about it. Okay. So Christine, do you want to speak about the school ideas first? And then Brett, if you have some other ideas, that's fine too.
How about now? Is that better? Okay. I don't have a large presentation, just give you a little bit of background. We've been spending, probably as long as I've been on the board, there's been discussion about the fields over at the high school, middle school. They need a lot of work. So we have now started really doing some research and looking into what is it going to take to revamp our fields. We've done an athletic fields soil condition assessment report. They've looked at everything that needs to be done, and we are now in the process of getting an RFP completed. And the way we're doing it is looking at almost like a menu. The first thing that really needs to be done, and has been made really obvious to us by several sources, is irrigation is going to be critical to doing anything with those fields. So the first step would be the irrigation, and then when we're going out to RFP, we're looking at each field individually, different parts, what's the bare minimum we can do to make them better, what's more that we can do, and then we're going to decide from there kind of how we move forward. Obviously, money is the issue. So the STEEP grant, hearing about that, we discussed tonight that we would like to ask for $230,000 is the pricing we have right now. It's not an RFP price, but it's a quote that we've gotten for irrigation. And if there's anything left over, we would like to apply it towards more revamping and more work on the fields that we need to do.
Would the 230,000 take care of the irrigation in all fields that
Yep.
were,
Yes, it would.
and what, can you tell me what fields those are?
That would be the soccer field, the and the baseball, softball fields.
Okay, nothing, everything on school property, not anything with rec. Just
Nothing
school.
on the rec. That's just for the schools.
Okay.
Yeah, we wouldn't be paying for field work at the rec
Okay,
department
thank
at this time.
Christine, is that 230 just for the irrigation part of that?
Yes, it
project?
is.
Is that a new number that you have?
Yeah, we got an updated number from Ian from the field soil after they came out and looked at, we had them come out and look at where our water sources are, what we have available and those kinds of things. It's not an RFP quote.
Right.
It's a ballpark idea of what we think it's going to run.
Weren't they previously at around 90?
They were less initially, but then when they started looking at what we would have to do and where to get the water from and everything else, the most recent email that we have from him with an estimated quote is 230,000.
That's town water, not well water, correct?
I don't know the ins and outs, Bob, off the top of my head of where that water is coming from.
Okay.
No, and I don't believe it's all town water. No,
The initial.
no, it's not. It's
Was the well. that
it's
was over
it's
there.
looking at the existing wells. I don't want to speak to that process right now because I didn't bring that information with me and I'm afraid that I would misspeak.
Gotcha.
So the decision at the Board of Ed meeting tonight was just to raise our hand and say, yes, we absolutely could use STEEP grant money to help us with this incredibly large project. And irrigation is only the first step. And that's going to be around $230,000.
Okay, and you know there's a 20% match as we spoke about.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Christine, when are you supposed to get the quotes from your RFP?
We're just moving to go to RFP shortly. I was told we didn't need those to move forward with the steep grant
So-
request.
We need to have, something that's signed off by a qualified professional.
Well, we would have that that's a quote though, not an RFP, right? I mean, when we did it for the other stuff, we didn't have an RFP yet either. We did the RFPs after the grant was approved. Has that process changed?
Unless
No.
you changed it last year, the RFP, you don't have to go out for the RFP until after you know you're getting the award.
That's correct. So that has not changed, but obviously the more
I do
accurate
have,
quote,
I
the
mean, we
better.
do have an email from this gentleman giving us a little more detail on that, and I can get you that quoted information.
So he would need to submit it and officially sign off on it as a professional.
That's fine.
Okay, so August 8th, I'd like
Yes.
to have the three selectmen decide on where we're going with all the possible steep grant application.
Okay.
Your 20% match would come from,
It would come from our non-lapsing. The
Non-lapsing.
entire project would have to come from non-lapsing. We don't have enough to cover the entire project. But again, what we want to do is see what can we do it in steps, and irrigation, really can make a huge difference. From everybody we've talked to, from people who have worked on the fields prior, people have had 10, 15, 20 years history with the fields, to talking to the people that have done the recent study, irrigation is going to be critical. You don't want to scrape, reseed, do all of that, and then just let it sit and not irrigate it. It would just be a waste of money. So we want to start with the irrigation.
Okay, any other questions for Christine?
Christine, can you also have him prepare, we need a proposed project schedule prepared by a qualified professional based on the scope of a project, if we're gonna submit this with the application.
Yes, can you email that to me though, Christine?
Yep, it was in the email I sent a couple.
Okay,
weeks
then I have that, and I'll make sure we get that for you.
Great.
And thank you for your consideration.
Oh, thank you.
Yep.
Okay.
so
Brett,
this one's a 500,000, you said?
it's a 500,000 with a 20% match.
Last year was up to 500,000. We applied for 3, right?
I think we got just
4?
over 400.
We sent it out to all the boards and commissions. We did get an email request from, Conservation Commission. They had submitted, the ADA compliant trail for another state grant that was denied. So, that was about $65,000. So they asked that, that could potentially be considered for the steep grant.
And the 20% match, Christine, is suggested. It's not mandatory, correct?
Correct.
However, the towns that do the 20% match will agree to it, go to the top of the list.
Right. No, I did see that. I just wanted clarification.
How much was the conservation easement?
It was
Conservation trail rather?
about 65,000.
Thank you.
We have all the paperwork from when we submitted it for the,
All right, thank you.
trails grant.
Brett, did you have something else you wanted to?
Yeah, I just, as we're looking at this and looking at what we've used the steep grant before, we've used it on recreation years and years ago. And a lot of times it looks like it's things that we might need that not necessarily the town always is in favor of spending the money on. And it gives us the opportunity to upgrade some of those things. I would love to get a quote if we're talking about irrigation of those fields across the street, of an irrigation on the rec fields. They are in really rough shape. If you have any kids that are out there, they really are in rough shape, and irrigation would be a huge plus to that facility. So I'd like to try to get a quote on that if
Do
possible.
you know what the water source is for that area?
So we'd have to put a well in from what I've seen so far, which wouldn't be extreme.
those upcoming storms are gonna start in about a half hour. Any other discussion on steep? If hearing
I
none,
just- Want to clarify, so of all the boards and commissions, Conservation Commission is the only one that came forward with that ADA trail
And Board of Ed.
and the Board of Ed.
I will say that some of them haven't had a chance to meet yet, so they might not have discussed it, but it's because of that quick deadline. The state doesn't seem to give us much notice. But I am grateful that we have more notice than, as a board, than last year.
next, we're gonna go on to number 7, Sustainability Committee presentation. Alexa, do you want to speak? And I see Emma's with you also, who I just met as she was getting sworn in. Sweared in. And Pat Turner's with you also. Perfect. No, that's fine. So, as you know, just a background is, Brett Mastrani had asked, as we have these boards that work with the Board of Selectmen, that would be nice to every once in a while have them come in and speak about what they're working on. And I know we had trouble getting time, either we couldn't have you because we're too busy to have you, or you couldn't make it. But I'm glad we finally figured out how you could get here, and thank you for coming, and thank Emma and Pat for joining you, so.
Is that on now? Okay. Do you want me to start? Okay. We were the recipient of this matching grant through the Sustainable CT program. So we have utilized those funds that have become available to us solely by virtue of the fact that we are a bronze certified town. And then actually I recently found out that there's also access to no cost assistance programs. So all these different resources that Sustainable CT will make available to us, whether it's education, sort of technical resources or different programs in different categories in order to kind of drive certain areas of sustainability as defined by this Sustainable CT program. So to start with that, our current certification level of bronze, it's a 3-year program. So we recertified such that now we expire with the bronze certification level in 2024. So we're still valid as of this year. At any given time, you can recertify or you can opt to apply for a higher level of certification, the higher being silver level. We have applied for that silver level in the past and haven't quite gotten there in terms of the number of points that we were allotted. We just ended up recertified for bronze. the past 2 years, we have gone through the exercise of sort of seeing where we stand and then determining whether or not it would make sense to go through the quite burdensome exercise of applying for the next certification level. In both last year and sort of preliminarily, the conclusion that we've drawn as of this year is that it would make sense, just given the small nature of our committee, to keep driving towards some of the projects that we are wanting to undertake, because the whole kind of point of the committee was, instead of just sort of, doing a big application for the sake of getting the certification, to really kind of be more strategic about how we move forward and develop some projects that are then just going to, kind of aid us in our certification, but not like what I call sort of, just teaching to the test. Like, instead of just doing the application and hoping that we get the points, thinking about bigger projects that will get us points, but that's sort of a byproduct of, the overall approach to just kind of making more strides on sustainability. So where we stand currently is at about 300 of 500 points that we would need if we wanted to get silver for this coming year. And so I think it might make more sense to, again, we won't expire in 2024. So in order to, the benefit of waiting until next year is that we will need to recertify anyway for bronze. And if we go for silver, we could potentially get silver and at the very least get bronze recertification. But wait until that expires and amass sort of more progress towards our projects. So that's where I'm sort of hoping, that that's the direction that we're going to go, and hoping for, certainly if you have any questions or concerns on that. The other thing that we're currently identifying is there's a separate program called the Climate Leader Designation that we have looked into last year as well. It's a new subset of the Sustainable CT program. And that we are at about 40 of 140 points if we just based off of things that we've documented so far. So I am going to work on seeing if that's something that we could put together an application for that particular program, which could be independent of the certification level, but just another accolade for the town. So I had a call this past week with the person who kind of is working on it. So just trying to figure out where we stand in terms of points there. So that's a little bit about the Sustainable CT program. To talk a little bit about what we've been working on as a group outside of that program, we took advantage of a grant through Wild and Scenic Rivers that we applied to at the end of 2022, where we partnered with Project Oceanology, which delivered programming. The grant was awarded to us for about $3,500, and it took, as a result, the 6th grade class of the school to choose. It was as a grant through Project Oceanology that was developed specifically for the town to study the Wood-Pawcatuck River watershed. And it was comprised of 2 components, a water filtration section that was done in classroom, and then a salt marsh transect study that was done on Barn Island Wildlife Management Area. So that was just a nice, kind of coordination of efforts to receive the grant funding and to allow the 6th grade school children to be able to take advantage of Project Oceanology programming for no cost to the town. So that was one initiative that we worked on and was successful. That happened. I know we're currently now working on the reporting that needs to go back to Wild and Scenic Rivers, the post reporting for the grant. But that hopefully was a successful endeavor. The other thing that we're very engaged in, turn it over to Emma now, is on an area that was actually identified as an opportunity for great sort of focus for our sustainability committee through the Great Plains Institute, which was a study that was done on the heels of our Sustainable CT certification. They gave us access to this study to be done. And one key area was regenerative and no-till farming. And so that's super happy to have Emma because this is a passion of hers. And we're trying to kind of put some things together in the area of regenerative farming. We did have at the North Stonington Ag Fair most recently. We put together a presentation on Thursday, which Emma was a participant in. Unfortunately, nobody attended, but we're trying to just kind of make strides in terms of getting this topic, kind of gain more traction on the topic. So turn it over to you.
Hi, everyone. My name's Emma. Move this up a little bit. Emma Sutton. I've been a resident since 2020. My boyfriend and I moved into a farm on, a pre-existing horse farm on 224 Dennison Hill Road. And we've since then been farming the property, small scale, intensively using regenerative practices, no-till practices of soil management and vegetable management, vegetable agriculture. I will just say quickly that I think the reason that nobody came to our presentation was because of where they put us at the fair and also because of people's intentions going to the fair. So I don't think it was any fault of Craig and I's, but next time we'll hopefully have better attendance. So the scale that I practice regenerative agriculture at is relatively small compared to the scale that other farmers in our town would probably be practicing it on. So a few of the sort of primary characteristics of the style of agriculture that we practice are we don't till, so we actually don't ever put any tiller or really any hoe into the soil, and that is aimed at really protecting the networks that exist between different biological communities. There's a lot of different science behind this, but a lot of regenerative farming has to do with the relationships between bacterial and fungal communities that are inside of the soil. And a lot of people don't know that anytime that you till the soil, you actually are breaking up those networks that are carrying nutrients to plants, to the vegetables. So I sort of became interested in this, about 8 years ago. And since then, it's sort of become my personal mission on a small scale to do this and to try to produce as many vegetables that I can through these methods. Some other practices that are involved are things like cover cropping. So really all of our practices are aimed primarily at increasing the nutrient fixing and carbon fixing properties of soil. So, I mentioned no-till, cover cropping, which is planting things like, different seeds like mustards or ryegrass or Sudan grass or clovers. So rather than just planting one crop of rye, we plant a variety of different cover crops to try to enrich the nutrient profile of the soil. And then other things like actually fitting hand in hand with what Pat is up to with the pollinator pathways. So we also don't use any chemical sprays. We don't use any chemical herbicides. So we're trying to encourage and diversify the environment that different beneficial organisms are living in, and also invite them to our property, to our farm. We also do things like we plant flowers and, different perennial and annual nectar sources for pollinators and different organisms. So what I'm trying to say is that regenerative farming, rather than conventional farming, to put it very briefly and very shortly, is aimed at regenerating, as the name would suggest, ecosystems and trying to put the pieces that have become disparate back together and to reconnect them. So some of the things that we've talked about promoting, because like I said, I'm doing this on a pretty small scale on about 3/4 of an acre. But a lot of farmers in the area, they're farming cows and corn. So we had talked about trying to bring in a larger scale farmer, maybe from the Midwest or maybe from another area in the state. It's really hard to get in contact with farmers during farm season, during production. But trying to promote some of these practices that I do on a very small scale that can be done on a larger scale. So just for example, because I want to keep this short, there are certain tractor implements and tractor attachments that can be used to you know, rather than tilling the earth or rather than using a pesticide application to terminate a cover crop, you know, which is what is planted between your cash crops, using something known as a crimper. So it's like a roller crimper and it attaches to the back of a tractor and it essentially just rolls down. So it actually cuts the stalk of the cover crop right at its base and allows it to lay down. And then you can plant directly into that organic matter, if that makes sense. So it adds organic matter to the surface of the soil profile that you can plant directly into. And then it's also creating, there's actually a lot of different insects that like to live inside of the hollowed out stems of different woody herbaceous grasses. So yeah, I could talk about this a lot. I'm really passionate about it. And yeah, we want to try to bring some of this information and knowledge to farmers in the area. And the other piece of this is that regenerative farming actually, it is labor intensive for the first 3 to 5 years. But once you get the system right in place, it's actually a lot more profitable too than conventional farming, because you get to cut out the expense of chemical fertilizers, you know, tractor implements, things that we've been funneling money into as farmers for generations. And it fits with sustainability too, because obviously it's a much more sustainable approach to cultivating vegetables and products from the earth. So was that enough?
And I have a question. Have you had any contact with our school, since we're a farming community, as far as maybe a farming club or a field trips to see how you do your
No,
farming?
that's a great idea. I did do just a small, Emily Noyes. So yeah, at the library, Emily had reached out to me and we did like a very, you know, a tour with little itty bitty kids that I don't think they fully understood, you know, like the what the kind of science that I was talking about, because my speech can get advanced pretty quickly. But I tried to tell them, you know, about worms and the importance of worms. And but that was great. So we had like a little reading circle at the farm. I would love to do more like that.
I wonder if we have, I don't think we do. I wonder if we have a farming club at the school. We have
We
clubs for
probably
everything.
should, yeah.
Just, I mean, in this community, you would think that would be a good start, right? To have a
Right.
club that would, because there's a lot of children who grew up on farms in our town that go to our schools. So,
Yeah.
and maybe people that maybe never will farm, but would like to have these practices too, because there's a lot of backyard farms in our town.
And that's the other thing too. I have a few friends that you know, have plots at the community garden and they're really interested in this. So yeah. So yeah, it's just a matter of kind of disseminating this on any scale, right? Like wherever people want to start, they can start small or they can start big, but trying to kind of bring it from the bottom up. People that want to farm just in their backyards and with their kids, and then people that are farming on a larger scale. So trying to create that sustainable, yeah, change and
Thank you.
initiate that. So
Any questions from the selectmen?
No, I can't think of a more perfect person to join the sustainability committee.
thank you. So sweet. Very happy to be here.
Pat, did you want to say anything?
My main project is the Pollinator Pathway Project, Falco Expert. And sustainability community, sustainable Connecticut, and therefore sustainable North Stonington isn't just about the environment. It includes housing opportunities, it includes arts. There's so many categories that this idea of having a town that is sustainable in every direction. And so we're focusing on certain areas in the environment, and that's great. That's kind of where I am, but that's not the project. It's much broader than that. And to get certification, you qualify in various sections. So we're talking about only part of it here. It's big. And that's important. Unfortunately, the person on the committee that was doing the most in these other areas has overwhelming requirements, and he's just no longer with us. But we did have a lot of help from another person. So, and if anybody out there wants to join us to take his place, we're here. But the Pollinator Pathway Project, again, I thank everybody that contributed to the crowdfunding. And we drew the pathway in the village, but it's for everybody in town. But a pathway is a contiguous strip, and we used money to create a children's garden behind the library, provided materials for Emily at the library. She's got kids. And there's a garden right by the road in front of the Congregational Church. And we worked with another project that Bill McGregor-Opoulos had behind the Historical Society. That's a huge project. That's a big project. And back to the Village Green and town parking lot. So that, and people in town need more people in town to join up. And if you join up by the sign, that spreads the word. But that's an ongoing project. One thing I really want, okay? When we redo, Jeffrey's been happy. You notice that the corner, easy, right, the little corner at the northwest corner of school property where the bus, that we have and heavy rains goes out the road. So quarter of an acre or less there should be garden. Take care of that. But part of my point is it's a big project, sustainable North Stonington. It's not just the environment, but a lot to get beyond that. Thankfully, our town has got a lot with solar. We're making progress, but there's more.
Thank you. And coming in September, when we have the community conversation on what we're going to do with that property and all your suggestions would be great to be part of that conversation. So you might be a small committee, but it seems like a mighty committee. And thank you for your passion. Thanks for coming this evening.
Thank you.
Anything else on that? There's no hand raised, a comment. Thanks, Alexa.
Bob, I
yes.
just wanted to make a comment. Thank you very much for that. I mentioned it when we talked about them being here, but I do think we should look at the membership of that committee and we should adjust the amount of members that committee is comprised of. So right now it's at 13. When it was started, I think we should bring it down to a manageable number. And I know there's not a lot of people out there, but a lot of times when committees or town groups are formed as a large group, it basically makes them mute to minority representation. So you can say we have 20 people and then you can fill as many spots as you want. I know we just need people, but I do think we should do it to a number that makes sense. So it's just not a ongoing large number of people that could be on a committee.
Mm.
So right now there's 4 members on there. I think something like 7 might be what most of our committees, larger committees are 7, but and usually odd numbers work. So I just think it might be something we should look at and just reduce what that says that size can be of that committee and then recruit for it. The other
Alexa,
3
if that was the
spots.
case, you heard Selectman Mastriani, if that was the case where we lowered the number from 13 to 7, would 7 be a workable number for your committee if we could get, yeah, so that's what I thought. Because that's something we probably will address then.
Yeah. Because what's the most you've ever had on that committee? 5. Okay.
All right, thank you. That's a good
Thank you.
suggestion. Thank you. Okay, moving over to number 8, speed humps. So I'm thinking that, looking in the room, that this might be the topic of this evening. So when we put these speed humps in, quick history that we talked about it for the last administration, talked about it for 2 or 3 years and never came to fruition. It seemed like every time that we got to the point where we were going to put them in, it was too cold and we couldn't put them in. So when we came into office a year and a half ago, we said, what was some of the things that weren't accomplished that should have been, and the speed humps were on the top of the list. So when we put them in the town, originally there was a call for 8 speed humps, and we said, why don't we do half of that and see how they work, and then get together maybe 6 to 8 months later and see if we made a mistake. Are they working? Aren't they working? Do we have just enough? Do we need more? And if we do, where do they go? And are the ones we have in the right spot? So, so now we're at that point. They've been in, I think, probably about 8 months, maybe 10 months. I'm not sure. The first 2 months were long months, but it seems like it's calmed down a bit. But I would like to just weigh in and say, from my perspective, sitting with my window on Main Street, all day long, there's still an issue in town with speeding, although there's not an issue where there's a speed hump. There's no speeding at speed humps. We know that for a fact. If there is, the driver's in for a surprise. So I would think that anyone that was near a speed hump, I know I talked to the pastor at the Baptist church, Marilyn Mackey, who's not here. I've spoken to her, and a lot of the people in our audience I have spoken with over the course of the 10 months. And they'll all tell you, I think, that where they live near a speed hump, the speeding has slowed down. It has to. It's not like having a policeman there sometimes. The hump is always there. And I think hopefully that the people that were somewhat childish when it came to speed humps have figured out that their lives were not ruined by 4 speed humps. So we're at this point now where we have 4, and I'd like to find out from the other 2 selectmen if you agree with me that they are working. If we want to take speed humps out, leave the 4 in, possibly maybe do a walk through the village and consider adding any. Are they in the right spots? Are there any side effects from the speed humps? I think there was a couple with water puddling up near a hump that we've tried to mitigate a bit with some small changes. On one driveway, we put like a berm on it so the water wasn't going into the yard. But anyway, I'm looking for discussion.
You know, as much as I go back and forth on those roads, I do think it works. I know we talked about having a community conversation or a discussion about it at a larger meeting, but I think it works the way it is so far. I also would not be in a favor of the expense of taking them out right now, because they do show a benefit. And I'd worry that if we took them out, what that does to the road surfaces, and then also what if there's a reverse effect of now people start speeding again, and it's because we took them out. I know there was a lot of people that didn't like them in the beginning. Some of those people that I've talked to have gotten used to them now, and it's just the way of life for them now of dealing with them. So I'm a proponent of leaving the ones that are in there now, and if we address, like you mentioned in the past, one on Rocky Hollow, I think that's another topic of discussion. But the ones that are in there now, I don't see a reason to take them out, based on the benefit that we've seen so far.
Mhm.
And I know the people that don't like them, they just won't ever like them. But I do think there's a safety benefit to it that we can't ignore.
I was told that they're not very historical, but neither a cause. So, Nicole.
Completely in favor of leaving the ones that are there in. I am in favor of doing a walk in town and identifying possibly 1 or 2 other areas. I would not take them out, absolutely not.
And we're not voting on this tonight.
No.
We just, what we was discussing it. And when I wanted to get feedback from anyone that came to speak about speed humps, to if they're pro, con, what their thoughts are. Some people live right next to a hump. Some people are just down the road. And Amy Foster, would you like to lead off? Since you're on your way. Just make sure that microphone's on, so, because we are recording the meeting.
Okay. I'm Amy Foster. I live at 33 Main Street, which is at the corner of Main and Rocky Hollow. I have my bedroom right at the corner, and I have my studio right adjacent to that. So I spend a lot of time observing that intersection. I can tell you the humps on Main Street have made a significant improvement in the speeding. However, Rocky Hollow definitely needs at least 1 hump. And I understand that the fire department's not going to be loving that with the trucks, and that's a main thoroughfare for them. But especially people leaving from the brewery, which is wonderful to have in the village, they go flying down the road, and it's reckless, and someone's going to get killed.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is My name is Lisbeth Shark. I live in 92 Main Street. And I think that what we should be evaluating here is more not whether we like them or not. I'm a resident, I just pass 2 or 3 or 4 speed bumps every day, twice minimum. And the first one that when I'm driving, I don't like them, but that's for me secondary. What I think that the important thing here is the speed bumps have been reducing the speed of the drivers. And by doing that, they have been increasing the safety of especially the kids that live in town. I have neighbors that have a bunch of little kids that go walking to the library. It is wonderful to be downtown and be able to walk to the library or walk to the high school. So people are doing this in this town. And I think that for the sake of the safety of the kids, we should be considering to keep the speed bumps.
Thank you. Pat?
I have to agree with Bob that they have an advantage, but there are certain areas that don't as he watches at his office. There are certain vehicles that I notice speed by, but the problem is we don't have a policeman there all the time to catch those vehicles. So we have to have a solution that works for everybody, like the bumps. The other day, I just happened to be outside in one particular car that sped from Wyasip up Main Street, extreme speed. Oddly, I happened to be out there later in the day when the same car returned the same way. We definitely need one on Rocky Hollow Road or in front of our house, which is 37 Main Street, or both. But there is a problem, and it hasn't, and that part of the village, it hasn't changed at all. I don't think you can blame the brewery. Some people are leaving there, but this one particular car that I mentioned, and some of the motorcycles that go by, they're not necessarily brewery. And it would be nice if we had a policeman to catch the particular vehicles. We don't. The speed bumps work, and we need at least one, maybe 2 in that part of the village.
Thank you, Pat. Any other comment? In the line? Who's it? Jonna, please speak. Thank you.
Hi, this is Jana Chokas. I live on 6 Rocky Hollow Road. I think the speed humps have significantly improved the speed on Main Street. And I do concur that you do need another speed hump on Rocky Hollow Road next to my house, or somewhere on Rocky Hollow Road. After people come out of the village, they just blast up Rocky Hollow to the next light. So do the village walkthroughs. You can stay on my front porch, which will shortly be done so that people can stand on it. But I encourage you to come up Rocky Hollow and just watch how people speed up that road. Thank you.
Okay, so I think Ann Gray's porch is available and Pat's front steps are available. So thank you. Any other comment? Any other comment? I mean, we're here so far, all positive comment. Is there any negative comment? Is there any reason why we should not keep the speed humps? Okay, I don't hear any of that. So why don't we plan on, we had a discussion. It seems like all comments are positive, including the selectmen's comments. So why don't we, when we get a chance, the 3 of us take a walk through the village, if we could. Maybe we'll bump into some of our neighbors. They can point out some of these spots. I have a couple ideas myself on where they can go. At the original 8, which I thought I had a map of that, I don't. One was on Wyasip Road on the hill, and I don't think we can put one on a hill. I think it's dangerous to put a speed up on a hill. But I think to add 1 or 2 on, maybe on Main, somewhere near the municipal parking lot and Pat's house, and maybe a second one up as you're going towards the light up near the Baptist church on the other side of John's house. Those might be possibilities, but I'd like to have you 2 with us, and as we used to do in some of our other field trips, just make it a special Board of Selectmen meeting, and we can walk in and get some ideas and feedback. And may give us a glass of lemonade if we stop by. I'm not sure, but I can convince her to give us a glass of lemonade while we're up there. Okay, anything else on speed humps? Gary, are you raising your hand? So the Board of Selectmen, I think, have control of the speed humps at this point. We're the ones that did it the first time. We're asking for comment, which is what we're doing tonight. We're having a hearing, was on our agenda. So I don't imagine there's going to be a vote other than the vote that we may take to add one or two and where those locations would be. Unless somebody files a petition with 50 names on it that wants to go to a town meeting and a referendum, which I don't expect to happen. But I think our board can determine additional and where. I don't know why we wouldn't be able to do that, so. But if there is a vote, I'll be glad to let you know. All right. Anything else on that? All right, so we'll move along. Perfect. You can sit in this warm room and watch us do the rest of the meeting, or you're welcome to stay or welcome to leave. You heard the steep grant proposal of HVAC and a new roof. I was thinking about you when I thought about that. Thank you. Lake of Isles Conservation Easement. The Selectmen, we had a special meeting where we did a tour of the conservation easements off Swantown and probably walked about a mile in the woods on the one that's up near Lake of Isles. And myself and Nicole were there. Unfortunately, Brett couldn't make it, but he's been out there before and he kind of has an idea what we're looking at. The attorneys for both the tribe and our attorney have asked to get a third party from the Forestry Division of Connecticut to look at it and come back with some recommendations. I would say I was surprised. I thought I'd see more growth than I did, especially in the first place we walked. And there's arguments on whether as Bill Ricker calls it, the slash, which is the falling trees put across the roads of the machinery would go on. There's difference of opinion whether that should be removed or not removed. And there's also some opinion about restoring versus not restoring because of the canopy of the trees. If you restored small trees, would they actually grow or not because of the shade? So I think somebody smarter than myself, someone from the Forestry Commission, Forestry Bureau should come to us and with some recommendations and have a hearing. There's no time frame on this. I don't think we should be pushed to so that this has to be done by a certain date, as long as we get to it over in the next month or so. But I think we should make sure that we do it right and get the people that we need to speak to us. We know what we've seen ourselves, but I think that we're at that point now where I'm ready to table this until we can get some additional information from a third party, unless the two selectmen would rather do something different.
The forestry expert, that's something we're gonna have to pay for? Or
They-
is that something
no.
that's a service that's available from them?
Part of our agreement with them is going to be that they pay for attorney fees and all outside services, so that would not come from the town, it would be coming from the tribe.
They've already agreed to that?
They have not, but we're the ones that are gonna be proposing what the penalty would be. I mean, we could propose a higher penalty too, so it might be a good compromise. Brett?
Yeah, I'm in favor of waiting to get some kind of report on that.
Okay, thank you.
Are they waiting for this final decision before they move forward with any more of their project?
So their project is in a cease and desist mode. They're telling us they're not gonna be doing anything more except for whatever we are recommending
On the conservation
on the
easements?
conservation easements.
Well, that's, I would think, a given, because they know now that they encroached on that. I meant, are we holding up anything in their other areas of their own private land?
I don't think we have the ability to. They can
Okay.
do whatever they want on their private land, and
Yeah.
that's part of where the confusion was to begin with on this. Because when they came to town and said, we're gonna be doing this work on our private land, it wasn't noted it was on conservation easement, so they can do what they want on their land. It's just on the conservation easement that they can't. Any questions online or in the audience on the conservation easements that have been disturbed? No?
Yes.
Yes.
What exactly do the tribes want?
Say that again?
What exactly do the tribes want? to do with this piece of land?
So what they claimed they were doing was they were, I don't even know if this is the right form or right definition, but they're calling it forestry husbandry. And they were cleaning up dead and diseased trees to make the forest stronger down the road. So they're pulling out trees that were, they're trying to clear up the canopy a bit so undergrowth would grow better, get stronger and more oak trees. They were also getting rid of trees, the ash trees that were damaged by the ash beetle a few years back. And also trees that were destroyed by what was formerly known as the gypsy moth. So those trees they were trying to take out and just thin out the forest a bit so it can grow back stronger. That was their intent. I think they also had some intent that they were selling some of the wood that they were pulling out to a sawmill called Hull Forest Products, which is in the northern part of Connecticut, I believe.
But I do just want to make it clear, because I asked the question when we were there that day. Anything that they're doing with that land, which is their own private land, is agriculturally relevant. And it's certainly not something that they're going to be putting up homes or apartment buildings or anything like that. They are really looking at farming the land.
Are you still with us?
Yes. So basically what you're saying is if they're going to be farming, they're going to have to clear cut.
So they can't clear cut on conservation easements, but
Right.
they can clear cut in their own land, which they did a lot of that actually about 6 or 7 years ago. If you drive up Swantown Hill Road, you'll see quite a bit of clear cutting happened on Mashantucket property.
Yep. All right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Any other discussion, quotes, questions?
So next steps is to try and find some type of forestry expert to walk the property and give us recommendations.
Right, their attorney was going to reach out to the Connecticut Forestry Division. He's been on vacation. He should be back this week, I believe. And then once they'll contact someone and we'll see if we agree that's the person we want to hear from. So as long as they have credentials and they're from the Connecticut Forestry Division, I guess their credentials would be fine, so. Okay. Yes, hi, Pat. Pat, I hate to do this to you, but could you speak here? Because those people don't know what you're saying. Thank you. Sorry about that.
Sorry to back up. When they did all the cutting,
Is it on?
okay? No.
Just do one, hit it once.
Lift it up.
All right.
When they did all the cutting, it really didn't made the road undrivable. Do they have any responsibility to the town? It is a town road. Do they have any responsibility on that?
They are looking at some grants to improve the road. I've told them that from Route 2 to their farm, if they came forward to the town with improvements, we consider those, especially if they're paying for them and not the town. If they're doing the things that they'd like to do, which is eventually a winery up there and a farm, they're gonna look at more traffic coming from Route 2 up that way. I also mentioned to them, I didn't have an appetite, but I'd have to have the other two selectmen agree with me on this. That going from their farm up to Northwest Corner Road, I did not want to have improved. Because I didn't want to have that a thoroughfare going through from Northwest Corner, cut through to go from Northwest Corner down to Route 2. But again, that's a discussion for another time, but their responsibility is they have graded it in the past. They put some millings on it and they've done that at their expense. And with this latest storm, I know it's kind of a mess right now again, and they've been having machinery go up and down it.
And I haven't tried to go through it in a few months, but I know it's nearly impassable, but I've done it, the north part.
Thank you. All right, number 10. Capital plan discussion. So I think one thing we're charged with is we wanted to come up with a definition of capital. And I don't know whether you were able to pull off some of the emails that Christine had sent out. But I saw one definition I thought made sense, and you can weigh in on it. It says a capital improvement is a major non-occurring improvement in the physical plant of a municipality as differentiated from ordinary repairs or maintenance of a recurring nature. Did not have a dollar value attached to that, but in my mind, that is what a capital improvement is. At this point on our 5-year capital plan, this was voted on in the last administration, was not to have anything on it under $10,000. And we didn't want to clutter it with a lot of $2,500 capital items. However, you could have a capital item that is under $10,000. So I think we need to discuss on how we want to best define capital. And I think that's the starting point. And then we want to talk to the Board of Finance if they agree with our definition, and clean up at the next tri-board meeting, which is in September, to really concentrate on capital. It's a big part of our budget. And it's a part of our budget that gets easily cut because it's large ticket item numbers. And we think we do the town a disservice sometimes when we have to get the budget cut down by, we'll say $200,000, and we can eliminate a $150,000 truck, and that covers most of it. So let's have a discussion on capital improvement.
Bob, do you mind just reading that one more time?
Sure, it's you got this page.
Or actually,
I could
yeah.
forward this to you, but it's a capital improvement is a major non-occurring improvement in the physical plant of a municipality as differentiated from ordinary repairs or maintenance of a recurring nature.
A recurring what?
Of a recurring nature.
Do we think that that constitutes pieces of equipment? It sounded more like bigger projects and improvements,
right, because there's capital assets, right? And then
like
we
a
have
fire
capital
engine.
improvements,
A
yeah.
fire engine is certainly what I would consider a capital purchase. But it, to me, what you read didn't quite seem to fit in there.
And that's the discussion.
Yeah.
Christine?
So I would say that anything that is helping us do maintenance and repairs and all of those things falls under the physical plant. I wouldn't say physical plant is just a building. I would say that it's your trucks and your other big scale equipment that
Okay.
goes with it as well.
Okay, so the physical plant of the municipality.
But in no regard to longevity of that item or that asset, of how long we use that for to determine what's capital and what's.
Or discussed with Christine today, and I don't think we came up with an answer because we disagreed, but if a lawnmower is a tool, right, you cut grass, is a plow truck a tool because it plows snow? And they're two totally different things, and one is much more expensive than the other. So how do you justify, we'll say, a $15,000 lawnmower versus a $60,000 plow or $100,000 plow truck? So
Also versus a $200 chainsaw.
right.
So I'm used to, in the kind of the healthcare corporate world, I'm used to putting a dollar amount. So I can manage my budgets with any purchase for me under $5,000. I think in a town, that's gonna tie our hands a little bit too much. I could entertain 15,000, but in my mind, capital, I think a particular price, right? Because that purchase requires a lot more thought and a lot more discussion rather than somebody, and no disrespect to anybody, rather than the highway department going out and purchasing a $25,000 new lawnmower that we need. But I personally would have liked to have had more discussion about that. Did we? And Donnie is phenomenal. He's been able to save us money in so many ways. I'm just used to a dollar amount.
Okay, that was a $14,000 lawnmower, by the way. Right.
I'm just reading the stuff from that Christine sent out that's in the Board of Finance handbooks for Connecticut municipalities, and they break them out. They talk about capital assets versus capital improvements, but they talk about how long the span is. So 75 years are that is for depreciated value, 75 years for buildings with capitalization threshold of 10,000, trucks 5 to 20 years, 10,000, equipment and furniture 5 to 20, 2,000. So I think we just need to come up with what works, but you're right, we can't tie the highway department up by saying a capital item is $2,000. But I would say that some of those lawnmowers that were just purchased would fall under that in my mind. And those were what, 16,000, that last one?
14,000. I think there's two pieces of equipment that went on the skid steer. One was I think it was a drill, post-hole drill. The other one might have been a brush hog. So I guess that's going to be the discussion. And we have a couple meetings before we have that tri-board meeting, but we want to kind of narrow down what we think, and maybe we should concentrate on this at our next meeting, but we want to narrow down what we think capital is. So when we go to the tri-board meeting, that would be what the town goes by. But we'll get input from the Board of Finance and the Board of Ed, especially the Board of Finance, but I think that they're looking for us too to determine what it is, so we can better judge it in future budgets. So we maintain a certain, whether it be a fleet of trucks or newer equipment, so it's not always breaking down. I mean, we should do repairs when we can to save the town money, but there's a point when you're just throwing bad money after good. And
Christine, has the auditors ever given us like a rough definition of what we should consider capital?
Well, that's the section you were reading. That's from our audit. The page 23 capital assets.
Oh, I thought that was from the handbook.
No, the bottom part
Okay.
is where the sentence that Bob read, that's from the handbook for Connecticut Boards of Finance. And the auditor also looks at things from two separate directions. So they're looking at what is a capital asset and whether you purchase it out of capital funds or not. If something meets these thresholds, it's capitalized and it goes into our inventory of fixed assets. But then there's the separate funds of your capital funds versus your standard operating funds. So they basically say, follow general guidelines. These are things you can do. And, it doesn't matter if you buy it with capital funds, you can still capitalize it.
So it shows that the capital improvement program is for our capital items, but you list them in order of priority based on your plan, correct? So we have to tie all that into the plan, but until we say what our threshold is of putting in the plan, it's hard to move forward.
Well, do the two of you have any suggestions? What, if we're just talking price, what pops into mind for you that you're comfortable with?
I think when we voted to go to a $10,000 number, that worked for us in the last administration.
I think
But I don't mind changing that if you have a different appetite for that.
I'd be on board with 10 as the
Yeah.
threshold and a longevity of a certain amount of years too. But I'd say 10 is comfortable.
Well, you're gonna have quite the range though, right? Because
Right.
a snow blower or a lawnmower is gonna have a very different life cycle than the roof on a building.
Right.
So the range is gonna be huge. I am in favor of 10. I had just said 15 because I thought that 10, you might think 10 was low, so I am absolutely in favor of 10.
So would you say if it's a 5-year plan, should we go to a $10,000 minimum with a 5-year or more of life? Because it was gonna have to change in less than 5 years. It's gonna be on the capital plan twice, right? In a 5-year capital plan?
Yeah.
So,
I agree with that.
so if it's more than over 5 years, over 10,000 over 5 years, then it would not show up on the capital plan twice. It shouldn't.
Under 10
Over
and less
10,
than a 5-year
would be-
would not show up.
right? That's correct.
Can you think of anything, Christine, that would?
So the only thing that I
might
would
have a
I
challenge
would
with?
say is when I first started, there was a capital line for recreation for the pavilion and I don't know if it was rec area and pavilion or something along those lines. And that had $2,500 that was put in it annually, and that was used for things that they needed to do to upgrade the pavilion, to keep the rec area in good shape. They used it to buy small pieces of playground equipment and those kinds of things. So if you're getting, we're not talking a whole new play set, because that's far more than that. But if you're looking at the little things on springs that you sit on and you rock, those are less than $2,000.
Right.
And it's gonna last more than 5 years.
Yeah, but I would think something like that, they could just put in their normal budget and say, for something like that of under 10,000, hey, this is going, we need to replace this, but it doesn't bring it to the level of it has to
Yeah.
go in our capital plan to be vetted out versus a fire truck.
Well, I think that when you have rec, you have more things that have to be at lower numbers, like you just said, but when you're talking on highway, fire, ambulance, they're
Yeah.
talking about bigger things. You
Yeah.
hate to weigh, there's so many decisions on the highway department, daily decisions on what has to be done. You would hate to have them weighed down by a $2,500 number, when most of the things are gonna be over 10,000.
Oh, I completely agree. I understand the predicament of what to do with that and what bucket to put it in, but 2,500 is way too low.
But I do think that the lawnmower, since that just happened, if we know we're gonna have to replace the lawnmower in the next few years, that should be in that plan to say, hey, we need to replace 5 lawnmowers over the next 10 years, whatever it might be, or 2 in the next 5 years. So then we can look at that and plan on it.
Yeah, so I mean, the first thing that we're doing is talking about what constitutes capital so that everybody can go back to their camps and understand what they're gonna have to submit. Part 2 is absolutely submitting their 5 to 10-year plan and what is coming up and then rating them, knowing full well that every board and commission really needs to put all of their wants and their needs forward, but then they have to help us out and prioritize them and triage them. Because unfortunately, everybody cannot get everything that they
Right.
want.
So then we have the capital, we have the assets, and then we have, improvement. So would we consider the roof as a capital improvement, correct?
Absolutely.
So we would plan that out. So those would fall. And maybe we can break those out separately on our list of what's a capital, what are we buying because we need to purchase, and what are our improvements for facilities?
And then I am in favor of the saving, right? So
Yes.
my husband and I want to add a new deck, a big deck on. We put money away every year so that when the time comes, we have that $20,000 to do it. I am absolutely in favor of putting money aside each year in the budget under capital so that we're not going to the town at a certain point saying, we need a $2 million fire truck.
I agree. And I think as we move forward, we have to look at some, whether it's policies we put in place or town ordinances we look at to say that if this is in here and we approve this and it's been approved at the budget time of that money going in, that we'd have to take it to another town meeting or something to take it out, right? Because we de-obligate things at times. So we de-obligated a lot of money towards our, what was it I found?
Oh, it was on
8
the,
years ago.
we do, on the
Something like
closing
that.
of the bulky waste.
Yeah,
pile.
closing of the bulky waste. We took out a large amount of money that was already put aside for that.
We were given the legal opinion by the town attorney that, yes, to de-obligate any project, it has to go to town meeting or has to be included in the budget process. So I don't think we need an ordinance for that. We already,
So that always happens over any dollar value.
since I asked the town attorney, since I've been here, yes, that's.
So
the-
whether
I
it's-
was told those are the only 2 ways to do it. It doesn't matter if the project's been completed, you still have to go to either put it in the budget to de-obligate or take it to a town meeting so the townspeople know the project's closed and you're de-obligating those funds.
And I think when you saw that happen, but I think that was after the 2010 flood with there was no money in the undesignated fund, and they were trying to build it back up, and they're trying to think of ways they could do that.
Right, but you're right. We can't second guess what happened, but building it back up, we just took it out and put it in reserves, which it was in reserves anyways, just geared towards a project. The only hesitation I have about sometimes when we take it back out of during the budget process is unless we really explain that to the resident. Sometimes that kind of just gets pushed in. It's like a bill that gets pushed, and then on the bottom line, we put in, hey, this money's going somewhere else. I just think if we start saving for a project, we don't know who will be in place after us or 10 years from now. And then that money is up for grabs unless we have some
No, I
there's a
agree with
place,
you.
but if that's what our town attorney said, as long as we're covered that way,
Yeah, once the towns agree, we shouldn't be able to change that. I mean,
without them saying it. Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, if you're more comfortable with having an ordinance, we can draft one to take to a future town meeting.
At least a policy that might go in our handbook that says, look, if it's here, these are our steps to
Yeah,
to get rid of
I'm
that.
in favor of clear steps to move it or deobligate it. I think that we always need to make sure that we're flexible so that if, God forbid, something major should happen
True.
and we need to shuffle money, there should be a clear process that the town agrees with to go through that, but I think we can't. I would love to say we're gonna squirrel away money for all of our big projects and keep it there and not touch it. But we have to be able to have a process to be flexible if something catastrophic should happen.
In the accounting policies and procedures manual that you approved at the end of the fiscal year, it's in there. There's a section in the capital projects fund about project fund deobligation, so you're covered.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Okay.
But I know what you're saying. I mean, when that bridge went out on Main Street, that was something no one ever expected. It was a big, I mean, the bridge was out for 2 years. People like Pat Turner, who lived near it, had to drive around to get to where she wanted to go. And if you remember, the parade couldn't go over it because it wasn't there. So I think that I get your point. I think if something catastrophic happens, there should be an out clause to say that we could take that money now in the best interest of the town and fix something that's a big negative for the town. So, okay. Anything else we're gonna,
I think during this process, and it came up at the tri-board meeting, is we do need to differentiate what the town is responsible for and what the school is responsible for with that building. I think that's an important step that we need to do. I chimed in a little bit to the end of the Board of Education meeting, and they were talking about like the roof that they fixed or they're putting out to fix, and they wanted to wait to see what we came up with capital. So I think we need to solve that, but to me, if that's already happened and we haven't addressed that yet, it should be from going forward, not what's happened in the past
I
2
was
years.
trying to get that answer from some of the other local towns, and it seems to be it's varied by town on how much responsibility there is from the town. But in most cases, it seems like that the physical building and outside, kind of like a condo, is on the town, and if it happens inside, it's on the
Which
school.
makes sense to me.
I agree.
There's 2 Board of Finance members here chatting in the back. Boys, Carl or Dan? Do you have, would you, I'd love to have comment from the Board of Finance if either of you would like to make comment on our discussion so far on capital. Any thoughts that's a key. We're doing a great job.
That was a
so-
lot of talk in the audience for that one thing.
Okay. But thank you for attending. Thank you for listening.
So
Yeah.
do we have to?
I think that
is
we
this
should,
just, bringing our feedback back to a Board of Finance meeting, getting on the agenda to talk about
That-
what are we voting on?
no, I think we should come back to the board, to the tri-board meeting in September. I think it's
Okay.
September 12th or
And that's
11th.
gonna give us enough time?
We've
That
got-
was gonna be my next question.
So-
So are we waiting to send out the forms and calls for information until after that meeting? I can make it work. I can make anything work.
My take is if we have a basic understanding of what we feel it should be, and if $10,000 is that mark, then we could send these out and at least get them working on them. Because it could take some time for the Board of Finance to get back to us, but ultimately it's our call of how we process our budget.
So would you like to do that this evening or on August 8th?
I mean, I'm comfortable with the dollar value. I don't know if you want to add in any other caveats.
We
to-
talked a little bit about, well, I just talked about years, so I said over 10,000 over 5 years of life. Should be a capital project, but that, you might disagree with that. It was just a guess.
I'm fine with that.
'Cause I'm thinking about a 5-year capital plan. I would hate to have it on there twice.
Yeah, so 5 years. So if you look at that list of just assets per se, 5 years is the minimum of the depreciation side, right? It says 5 to 20. There's 4, but that's electronic equipment, which I think the 5 is a comfortable number based on that. I disregarded the low and the high. That's why I came up with 5.
Carl, you
So,
have a comment?
I just have one quick, so I remember seeing some type of a longer range plan from the fire department.
Yes.
Thank you,
regarding-
Alexa.
So that's something that thank you, Alex. That's something that I'm interested in seeing from the library, from the highway department, from the school, from the fire department. I would like to see what they are considering, their priorities, what needs to be replaced and when, and then a triage amount. And then what I think we need to work with the Board of Finance on is what is our, and I don't know when that comes, what is our dollar amount? If we're gonna dedicate $2 million this year or in FY 25 to capital, then our job with the Board of Finance is gonna be determining who is getting that $2 million. How are we dividing that up?
I agree 100% with you. Well, 99% with you. I would take the library out of that discussion
Okay,
because they aren't, we don't own that building.
no, okay.
Where, I mean, we give money towards their operating, but as far as their 10-year, 5-year capital
Yeah.
plan, we can ask that
get it.
from the fire because we use their building. We pay for the fire trucks when we need them
Yeah.
and things like that. That's the
So I
only thing.
think that if there are, aside from the library, if the ambulance department, the fire department, rec, if anyone's identifying capital, then I would like to see their 5 to 10-year plan.
Okay, I know at this point, the fire company and the highway department already have long-range plans. I think the ambulance knows when they want to buy new ambulances as a
Yeah.
good start. I will say, I will speak for the rec right now. They do not have a capital plan, so just getting started on it. We're gonna go small scale, a 5-year, see what kind of needs they can identify. But I can put the ask out for anyone submitting, please submit your 5 and 10-year plan.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about the form tonight? Do you want to bring that up on August 8th and we can talk about changes at that meeting so that we know it has everything that you want on it?
Yeah, I
And
know
then
you
we can
gave us
send it out.
at the last meeting, but maybe, yeah, give us,
Yep.
I think maybe till the 8th, so we can know for sure this is how we're doing. That's my opinion.
Okay.
Okay.
Carl, you have a comment?
Yep, Carl Johnson, AB Ruderman Road. I think you guys don't need to give an estimate amount. You need to do what Nicole just said. Find out what they need, when they need it, put it all in a list, then you guys gotta prioritize it. And that gives us a start as far as the finance board to tell you how much we can set aside so that we can plan for that. The biggest thing is you guys have to get to set it up so that nobody can take it out of it, of the capital to get rid of it. Can't use it for anything else but the capital.
So as far as prioritizing, how I think I'd like to have the people asking prioritize.
Yes, no, exactly what Nicole just said. Do that, but you don't need to set a price for it.
I think personally, I think we do, because otherwise you'll get a shovel, I mean, you have to have some
They
limitation.
gotta have some
on what it
common
is.
sense a little bit to set up. I mean, if you want to set it at $5,000, what do you depreciate at? I believe Dan mentioned $5,000, and you start depreciation, anything over that. So set it at 5, and then you guys can pick and choose what is too low. In other words, a shovel, that's ridiculous. You're gonna put that on your thing.
Right.
Okay, so I think you guys need to do what Nicole said, is to get each department to tell you what you want, where they had. The fire department had theirs all set up, 20 years, replace this, 5 years, replace that. The same thing with a highway garage.
So I just think the highway department though calls that one department that will fluctuate between 5 and 10. There's
All the
things they have to
rods
buy,
and
whether it be sets of tires.
Yep.
We've seen repairs that have cost $8,000 or $9,000 and they're not on capital. They're in expense.
That's in their repair. That's in their maintenance and repairs section. Their capital items are stuff that lasts 4 or 5, 6 years. The lawnmower, how long is that gonna last? The $14,000 lawnmower, that should last 7 to 10, maybe 20 years.
But if,
So
if we,
in their capital, let me just finish, in their capital, if they just bought it, I think I need to replace that in 10 years. So in 10 years, this is gonna come back up again. It's hopefully be longer than that, but that's the type of things that you're looking for.
But if we don't
So-
put a dollar limit, like I worry about, we just bought a lawnmower, we bought all this other stuff at the end of the year. If we didn't know
When you're gonna
about it
need to
till
buy it
then-
again?
What's that?
When are you gonna need to buy it again?
I mean, we have how many? I don't know. We have,
You
6
shouldn't
lawnmowers.
need to buy it for another 5 to 10 years. So that should.
we don't need to buy that one lawnmower, but it doesn't mean we're not buying 3
Right.
more.
So the next lawnmower that is 20 years old, we need to replace on,
Right, but I'm saying we don't give
2028.
any guidance, so we have no guidance to them. The same thing that just happened could happen again. So we have no guidance over dollar value
Yeah,
of
but if I'm
longevity.
correct, the guidance was the one machine that was down and they were short. That one machine is in for repair or is gonna be repaired, should last another 5 or 6 years once it's repaired. But when it's broke, it's broke. That's why they believe they had to go a little higher or go, because
Like,
they're cutting more places.
That's fine, but when it's the last 2-3 weeks of the fiscal year, that's different. So,
That's the emergency stuff that Nicole said might happen. That's my opinion.
but there's a difference between end of year spending and emergency stuff, and I worry that this was end of year spending, even though one broke and we had 5 others. So if we don't have a guideline in place of a dollar value of things like that, this could happen.
And
all
how,
the time.
just so I can understand it in my head, how is a dollar amount gonna save that?
Because if we wouldn't spend $14,000 on the lawnmower the 2 weeks before the fiscal year ends.
Then how would you
would plan
continue
for it.
mowing without that mower?
We have 4 other mows. I don't think it was a necessity that we needed it by July 1st to be able to maintain what we had. There were,
Okay, so
if
that's-
what I've heard in the report that I think Donnie said is the fair used 1 or 2 of them to mow their fields for the fair. So we
Yep.
lent them out to people. So you
That's-
get into a
that's
lot of
2
stuff.
days
but-
out of the month.
Okay, I have my opinion
Yeah.
on what it should be.
Okay, well,
Thanks,
just-
Carl.
We just use that as an excuse, but that's. I think we should go with what Nicole's saying. Everybody should have a list in order of what they need, where they're at, and stop taking that money out as a savior for when everybody asks you to drop.
all right,
That's my opinion.
thank you, Carl. Thank you. Yes,
So on the form right now, I have that for the items in year 1. Well, it just says, please include an estimate for the purchase of the item, a quote from the vendor, information from the website will be accepted. Do we want to require that for everything in the 5 years or just the things in year 1?
can you just say that again?
So we ask for quotes. In the past, we've had a ballpark number for an item. So we put that in the budget and then we went to buy the item and it was actually more money because things keep going up. So we started asking for quotes for the specific item that they wanted to purchase, so that we knew we had enough money in the budget. So a quote would come in for $45,000. So we put $5,000 in because we know we're not buying it for an entire year. Do we want to ask for that for all 5 years of the 5-year plan or just for the items that are in year 1?
In my opinion, just the items in year 1, so much can change in the remaining 2, 3, 4, and 5 years that I don't think we can predict that. I think we have a pool of money for FY 25 capital, and I think that we take a look at what we can afford to put in, a $45,000 snow blower, and we're gonna put $10,000 in it this year. We don't know. We may have a huge surplus in year 3 and we'll be able to put more in. But for me, really all I care about is year 1.
And for
That's just me.
I agree.
So for triaging, since some departments may be only submitting 1 request, is there some, if you guys can think about this for the next meeting, is there some phrasing or verbiage that we can put on the form that says, rank the importance of this on a scale of 1 to 10, or dire straits must have this, can operate without, something that we can put so that everybody doesn't just say absolutely 10 out of 10, I need this, need this, need this. Cause I'm trying to figure out a good way to.
Well, I
scale
mean, I
that.
think some of the questions, you know, is there an option to repair or refer? Some of the questions we're asking is going to tell us a little bit about how much. I do, benefit of the town, I am in favor of putting, can you not physically complete your operations without this? I think that that's key. I think that that separates the needs and the wants.
Okay. Brett, any comment on those? No, I'm good too. Nicole, great points. Thank you.
So where are we going from here then?
We're gonna get back on this on August 8th.
Okay.
So you'll
And
have
we
the
do
form
have
in your
time?
pack. Yes, you'll have your form in the form in the packet again for the next meeting so that you can review it again. We can make changes. I'm making my notes already of things that we want to add and change. So
But there's nothing saying that you can't reach out now to the boards and commissions and say, be preparing your 5 to 10 year plans for those that don't have them. Listen, if they don't, then we can't make a decision about who gets the money.
I can send it in.
Okay, if there's nothing else on capital this evening, who would like to do tax refunds?
Doing tax refunds now?
Number 11.
Are
tax
you, do you want to, all right.
I will make a motion to approve tax refunds in the amount of $420.97 total, going to Russell Robinson, the law firm, the Sawyer Law Firm, Edmund Scarchilli, and Xerox Financial Services.
I'll second.
Okay, so we've have a motion and a second on tax refunds in a total of $420.97. Any other further discussion? If hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. Old business, number 12. This is going to be fairly quick this evening because there's not a lot to report. So demolition of 1-story, 298 Norwich Worcester Road. I have no updates at this time. Vacancies and appointments. We have none at this time. ARPA funds update and discussion. There's no new updates since our last meeting. And on D, plan of conservation development, there is an update. The conservation and development and community conversation will be taking place on Saturday, 9/9 at 9. So Saturday, September 9th at 9 o'clock. And that'll be split into two parts. There'll be a first part will be on POCD. Then there'll be a break for lunch, and then we'll talk about the 298 repurposing of the 298 building and the grounds. Not the building, but the grounds. That's 9/9 at 9. Someone from the Board of Ed that's related to someone on the Board of Finance came up with that. Saying, you want to figure out that one, that clue. If there's no discussion, we can go to minutes.
I will make a motion to approve the Board of Selectmen meeting minutes held on July 11th, 2023 at 6:30 PM at the North Stonington Education Center and via Zoom as written.
A second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. As motion, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
And I will make a motion to approve the Board of Selectmen special meeting held on Swan Hill Town Road near 187 Swan Town Hill Road on July 18th, 2023 at 11:45 a.m. as written.
Since Brett wasn't there, I'll second that. Any discussion? All those in favor say
Now,
aye.
there was a discussion. It was hot. It was
And muddy.
hot trudging through the woods. But I will approve the minutes. Oh,
So you've motioned, I'll second the motion. Any other discussion besides being hot, muddy, humid? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions? You say
I'll
aye.
abstain, but you don't have to ask for abstention.
Oh, and any no's, so,
Just not vote.
okay, so it's 2-0-1. Okay, any public comment? Our next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, August 8th, 6:30 in this room. I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. The meeting is ending at 8:21. Thank you.